Hello, everybody. How are you today? As always, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Lee Roebeck here with us. Everyone who kind of knows me reasonably well will know that I am a massive advocate of mindset. And Lee is, well, certainly for me, my number one go-to person when it comes to having a fantastic mindset to get you where you want to go. So yeah, quick introduction. Lee, for anyone who doesn't know you, please do give give an introduction of who you are.
Sure, Emma. Good morning, and good morning or good morning, good afternoon, good evening to whoever's listening to us right now. My name is Lee, and I'm a mindset coach, and I help entrepreneurs or individuals remove money blocks and attract clients easily. And I work with individuals all around the world, just like Emma, and these people are experiencing quantum leaps in their results because of the ideas that we teach. Thank you, Emma.
Quantum leaps, that's a pretty huge thing to say, isn't it? And I know in life we are kind of encouraged to, well, I don't know about you, but we've got a new government and they're really excited about having a 1.5% growth over 5 years. I'm not sure I'd be that excited about that kind of growth. So hearing about quantum leaps, just really makes me feel that there is so much more that we can go and achieve, go and get. So let's just sort of jump into it. I know we've got a lot to cover off today, and one of the things we are coming up to, so I don't know about you, but it's what mid-ish November, and so therefore I am going to be planning my 2025 in a couple of weeks' time. I'm sure you're doing the same, so we'll be setting these big goals. So let's jump into it, Lee. We're going to be talking about sort of paradigms and things like that. But let's talk about how you're feeling about, coming to the end of this year and moving on to next year.
So, to be honest, Emma, obviously there's some targets that I have not hit yet. Look, we've still got about a month and a half, or about a month left, essentially. But I'm feeling pretty positive. I've had some nice momentum generated towards the latter part of this year. So I'm feeling positive. And just excited for what 2025 holds. I mean, even if we don't get exactly what we want, there's a lesson in it, right? So there's always something that you and I can take away from whatever we've experienced this year, But the conversation that we were hoping, Emma and I were hoping to get into today, is that if we're going to get different results in 2025, so we plan 2025, we set big targets again. If we're going to improve our results in 2025, we've got to operate with a new model. So we can't keep doing things the same old way, right, Emma? We've got to start doing things differently. I think that's what you've kind of alluded to and what we're going to get into here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, and I certainly found this a bit difficult because we kind of grown up, haven't you? If you've got sort of what I call nice parents, they'll always say to you, "Oh, you're perfect, exactly how you are." So it took me a while to sort of understand this kind of shift of how it's actually just about becoming a better person. And you kind of really clarified that in Bob Proctor's words, is you started talking about the fact that Bob had changed the way he was a number of times. And I found that really hard to understand. But actually, it inherently goes back to whether you're religious, to biblical times and all those things. But inherently, as people, we look to improve ourselves on a daily basis. And if you earn, I don't know, £25,000 a year, you're going to be thinking very differently to somebody who's earning £2 million a year. And that's something that is really key. And I actually listened to a billionaire the other day do a presentation, and he was he clearly just thought so differently. And I was a bit embarrassed because I didn't know how many noughts he was actually even talking about. I was like, hell, if I need to get there, I've got to know how many noughts he's talking about. So yeah, so it is all about this kind of becoming a yeah, as you say, becoming this kind of different person. Is that kind of what we're talking about, Lee? Is that the understanding? Did you find that easy when you first understood this?
So to go back to what, the good parents or what your parents told you in terms of, you're just perfect, just the way you are. Um, that's not too far from the truth. That's really not too far from the truth, right? Because to anyone listening to this, you're firstly a spiritual being. You moved into your body, one day you're going to move out of it, and your spiritual DNA is perfect. So the essence of you at your center is truly perfection. But our behavior is not perfect, right, Emma? And our results are in many areas far from perfect. And that's because we have this insidious thing programmed into our subconscious mind, which is called a paradigm, and this controls the behavior. The paradigm is made up of your belief system, your self image, and your habits, your habitual way of operating, how you show up. And it's these three components in your paradigm that create the behavior, that creates the results, and also determines what sort of things you are attracting into your experience. So, in terms of the journey, becoming that higher version of yourself, that better version of yourself, right, Emma? It's a journey into upgrading all of those ideas in your paradigm, or maybe for the most part, because if there's a perfection within you, for the most part, it's in clearing out all the rubble or all the rubbish that's in there, and just letting what's inside of you, deep inside of you, come to the fore. And it's a challenging journey. It's a tough journey, and I know you've walked this journey, but it's so rewarding. Like it's so liberating when those ideas start moving out of the way, or when you start upgrading them to more empowering ideas.
Fantastic. So for those who, some of these concepts might be quite new, can you just sort of dive a little bit more into exactly what this paradigm is, what it's kind of made up of? Because I know even over the time that we've been sort of working together and I've been learning from you, is it's become more. I think when I very first started, it was such a big concept that actually I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I love what you teach because it gives you practical steps to move forward. It's not kind of ethereal. It's not kind of like, oh, hope and the world will come to you. It's really practical steps. And that to me, being a very kind of practical, logical person, works really well. So can you kind of deep dive a little bit into what exactly this paradigm is, what it looks like, what we should be looking out for?
So the paradigm it's a mental program. So it's, to break it down, Emma, it's a multitude of habits, or it's your belief system. That's essentially what a paradigm is. It's a multitude of habits, or it's your belief system. And I know you and I have talked about these sort of ideas in the past on this platform. But let's say you were programmed with the idea that money doesn't grow on trees. You heard that 1,000 times, or money is the root of all evil. You heard that 10,000 times growing up. That program, beliefs or ideas deep into this subconscious program, that money is hard to come by and money is evil and reprehensible. And then people wonder why they get to 60, 70 years old, 50 years old, and they still struggle with money. It's because we've got all of these negative ideas that you did not even originate. A lot of the, not a lot, but most of what's in your subconscious paradigm, you didn't choose, right, Emma? At the moment of conception, a cell from mom, a cell from dad formed the nucleus of you. And there was programming right in the DNA at your moment of conception. And here you come into the world, you're a little girl or a little boy, and your subconscious is wide open. And all of the ideas from your environment, the aunts, the uncles, your parents, grandparents, the coaches, the teachers, everyone around you, all the ideas are going into the subconscious paradigm. And here you've got all of this potential, all of this perfection within you. But because a lot of what we were programmed with these limiting ideas, we struggle to bring it to the surface. And I don't know if that clarifies paradigm a bit more for you in terms of what you were trying to achieve there, Emma.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you used to talk about, kind of, it's a multitude of habits, as you just had. And I suppose what I eventually came to understand, so like you say, let's say, money's the root of all evil. So it's kind of like, yeah, I understand that is, my inherent belief system. And then I think then when things really started to slot in place is that within us, we have our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, but it was those habits. So when somebody says, when, I don't know, somebody drives past in a nice car, your habitual reaction is to go, potentially, they must be a drug dealer. Or, these are, all of these things are the response from that belief. And that was really kind of mind-blowing for me. Whereas now when I see like somebody in a nice car go past, and I had to train myself to change this, I now think, wow, I wonder what they do to enable them to buy such a lovely car. That's really exciting for them. Now, don't get me wrong, I do still get the odd thought, but I'm able to sort of see that. So that was, really interesting to me, was to understand these kind of habits. And then you also mentioned, self-image, and that was a huge one for me, the way you kind of behave around yourself, isn't it?
Self-image is your attitude to yourself. Like, a lot of people treat other people better than they treat themselves. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever noticed, Emma, how some people, they look at wealthy people and immediately they start treating them badly, or they start speaking badly about them without even having some sort of engagement or interaction with that person? But it's their beliefs around money. It's not the individual. It's not the individual. So, especially when you start striving and working towards something, you start stepping out, taking actions that make everyone around you feel uncomfortable, that really, just watch how people start reacting towards you. Just watch how people, because it makes them uncomfortable, right? I mean, if you're doing things differently, or you start accelerating in your property journey, you've just taken on a huge property now, those sort of things can make some people who are in a comfort zone, who are comfortable with their current result, feel very uncomfortable. You start making more money, accelerating in that area. Oh no, Emma thinks she's better than everyone, or I don't know. It's the craziest thing, but somehow, but this is the paradigm, right? So this is what we're talking about. I want to tell you do you mind if I tell you Bob's story, or I tell our audience Bob's story?
Do you mind if I just interject there? I think that's really, really incredible. And I think a lot of people, myself included, you almost kind of feel fearful. So I know when I started talking positively about money, if I feel I'm talking to somebody that I perceive to perhaps not have money, I'll kind of really play things down. I might not mention things and stuff like that. And that's just a really crazy kind of way to do it. And then other times when I've kind of been really brave and I just talk, not in an arrogant manner, just in a generalist manner, actually the response of people has been really powerful. And yeah, and going back to your other point about treating yourself, I mean, that is an amazing one. You hear, especially the people who verbalize it, they say things like, oh, silly old me, or, oh, I can't believe I'm so stupid, I've done that. And even just saying those words makes me feel a little bit unwell, because I'm so used to kind of, and I'm not saying that I'm in at all always nice to myself. In fact, I was on another meeting this morning and I just looked at myself. I thought, my gosh, you look dreadful. And then I thought, but you know what? I really love you still. I was trying to kind of combat that kind of that persona. Sorry.
Those words that you said right there, you wouldn't say it to anyone you love. You wouldn't say it to your kids. Why on earth would you say ideas like, I mean, but here's the thing, once again, coming back to the paradigm, you did not originate those ideas. We were, in your little life, you were told or you were sold certain ideas about yourself. But here's the beauty, right? With a paradigm, you can change that programming, you can take control of it, and you can be your biggest cheerleader and speak yourself into everything that you want. Like, why not have an internal voice that says, I'm really good at this, and I'm getting better. Anybody who would to come around me would be lucky or fortunate. Everybody who I interact with, their life is improved as a result. Why not talk yourself more empowering ideas about yourself? I mean, none of our lives are perfect. No one exists in perfection. It's just impossible, right? But the thing is, we can speak to ourselves in a way that really, we make a difference. We step into our power. We compete on a higher level. We get better results. But that all starts with that inner voice. Self-talk is everything, but it's the paradigm when you in your head about certain things, ideas, people, situations, right, Emma? It's that paradigm that's essentially talking to you. And that's why you hear a lot about people being told, watch what you say to your kids, watch how you talk around your kids, because what you tell them and your voice that's around them every day, that becomes their voice as they move through the rest of their life. And this paradigm is speaking to them unless they come around some information like you and I have, where they can change that inner programming.
Wow, it's making me feel quite emotional. So I think when we talk about, for those of us who have kids, obviously other people will have people that are really genuine and dear to them. But I think it's really powerful when you say, would you say those things to your children? And, most people would just be horrified. Of course, I would never say such a thing, that sort of self-talk. But actually, there's a story. Again, I'm really working, as I know you are, Lee, to try and help my children. I sometimes feel I'm not sure I can help my 18-year-olds anymore, but I do try a little bit. But my 8-year-old, so we went out for a ride, her and I really love that hack together. We're riding out. It was a lovely day. Anyway, we were picking up another child. We found another child in the village who rides, but her mum doesn't ride. And I said, oh, don't worry, we'll all go out together. I'll take her out. Anyway, Rosabella just got herself in an absolute tears, really frightened. And I kept saying to her, darling, you're worrying about something that you don't know is going to be a worry yet. And one of the things I made her do on the way down, because she was crying at this point, it's supposed to be a joyful, fun thing, and she's now crying on the pony. I said, look, Rosabella, look up and say, this is the best ride I've ever been on. And she started giggling, and she did it. And she was like, this is the best ride I've ever been on. And we did that a few times. And then we picked up the child, and then, we had a fantastic ride, and we got home. And I said, was that the best ride you've ever been on? And she said, yeah, actually, it was a really good ride. And I said, did you really need to sort of worry beforehand? She said, no, probably not. And so it's really amazing, isn't it? That kind of trying to point things out, and it's that reflection on ourselves. But yeah, sorry, carry on with your story, Lee.
That's such a wonderful story, Emma. Such a wonderful story, and what a moment, and such a simple moment. But I promise you, they're so impressionable at that age that you've drilled that idea into a mind. As you were talking, you reminded me of a couple of things that I've gone through with my son. So as you know, Zach is 10 now. But when he was 3 years old, Emma, and I'm sure you've heard me tell the story before, when he was 3 years old, Christmas came around, and instead of going out and buying him, a typical toy for a child, I thought to myself, this year for Christmas, I'm going to buy him a self-talk album for kids. And there's a wonderful author by the name of Dr. Shad Helmstetter, Helm Stetter, and he's authored a book called what to say when you talk to yourself. So it's all about self-talk, and I think, in fact, his website is called Self-Talk Revolution or Solution or something like that. And so I hopped onto his website and I was looking at the self-talk albums, and I seen here he's got a self-talk album for 1 to 7 year olds and 7 to 14, I think it was. So I bought the one for 1 to 7 year olds, and remember, Zach was 3 at the time. So, every weekend when we'd be together, or even during the school run in the morning, I had the self-talk album going. So all empowering ideas. And Dr. Shad Helmstetter had the voice on this. There were 6 tracks on it. The voice was in the voice of a bear, Shadrach the bear, obviously to connect or relate to where the kids are. And I still remember we played it so much, those 6 tracks, over and over, Emma, over and over. I still remember some of the ideas. One of the things which Zach and I still talk about today is when I talk to myself. So the bear says now in the self-talk album, the bear says, when I talk to myself, I say the right words. I can do it. I believe in myself. And every day I'm getting stronger and taller and braver and smarter and happier. And then the bear says it, and then he says, now, okay, you say it. And then, watching Zach in the car talking back to this bear all the time. And for the first, this started at when he was 3 years old, and I'm pretty disciplined. Like whenever he was in the car, I stuck with it. I played it, Emma, even though I couldn't see any shifts or changes. But I understanding how the paradigm is programmed, I thought, no, let me go with this. And I didn't see anything until COVID. So here COVID hits 2020. He's just turned 6 years old. He's at home with his mom, obviously doing a bit of homeschooling because everybody confined to our homes. And one day his mother sends me a picture of something he had written. And long story short, on the animation he was watching, the animation he was watching, it said something about I can't achieve it, or I can't attain this goal. It was literally typed, and he paused it and he realized, but something's not right there. He went to the room and he got a piece of paper and a pen and he wrote on it, I can. So he didn't agree with that. And another, that was the first sign I could pick up. And then the other thing I picked up one day, I took him also around the pandemic. He was learning how to skate on a skateboard. And he's right-footed, but he was putting his right foot over the top of the skateboard and pushing the skateboard with the left foot. And he was doing it incorrectly. So I took him to a local mall here, and I went onto one of the parking levels where there were no cars, so it was clear and smooth. And he was trying to skate, and I was telling him, no, put your left foot here, pump with your right foot, and bring it square on the back. And he kept doing it. Emma struggled for about a half an hour because he was now moving from the other side to this side. And he kept doing it, and he kept falling off or coming off the skateboard. He wasn't getting it right. And eventually, about a half an hour later, he gets it right, and there's he going, and he's on the skateboard, and he's, really going. And I'm getting excited at the back. I'm like, yes, you got it, man. Well done. This little cocky bugger gets off, Emma. He turns around and he looks at me and he says, I got that right. He says, because I believe in myself. 6 years old. And
wow.
That's really, the only gift that I wish I could give him is a gift of confidence, the gift of that believing in yourself. The challenges will come, life will test you, nothing's perfect. But if you've got that inner voice that says, I can, I believe in myself. And yeah, I think, Emma, coming around this information in relation to paradigm, in relation to programming, we're in a position to leave our kids better off. But you see, here's the thing, right? We're all not aware. And I know for a large time, part of my life, I wasn't aware of what's really controlling us, how this inner program, the subconscious programming operates. I really didn't know. And once you know better, then you can do better, right?
Definitely, definitely. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Lee. That was, yeah, fantastic. I bet that kind of hit you a bit when he said it to you. Hilarious. I'm imagining it. So please do go on and talk about, you were going to talk about a story from Bob, was it? With regards to times?
So, people in your audience that are maybe on a property journey, you've set a big property goal. I want to tell you a story that you might connect with. So, my mentor, the late and legendary Bob Proctor, in 1961, he was a fireman. He was a fireman in Toronto, and he was earning $4,000 a year, which is probably a pretty average or an average income way back in 1961 if we take inflation into account. But he owed $6,000. So he was earning 4,000 and he owed six. And when he used to tell the story, he said he was in an impossible situation. If he had worked for a whole year and a half just to repay debt, he'd have nothing to live on. And during his time at the fire station there was a man who used to come around, a man by the name of Raymond Stanford. And Ray obviously seen something in Bob, or he took a liking to him. And one day he decided, I'm going to wake this man up. And he said to Bob Proctor, he said, Bob, you've got to be one of the most miserable people that I've ever met. And Bob says, as much as that shocked him, right, Emma? He says, he had to admit that there was some truth to what this man was saying. He wasn't a very happy guy. Then Ray said to him, he said, you always seem to be sick. I mean, you don't have any terminal illness, but you always seem to be coming down with something. The sniffles, a headache, something's up with you. And once again, Bob had to agree. There was truth to that. And then thirdly, Ray said, you never seem to have any money. And like I've just said, Bob earned 4,000, he owed six. Then Ray said to him, he said, do you think I'm a happy guy? And once again, Bob had to admit this guy always had a spring in his step. He was always upbeat, always seemed positive. And secondly, Ray said to him, have you ever seen me when I was sick? Bob had never seen this man when he was ill. And thirdly, Ray said to him, have you ever seen me when I was broke? And Bob Proctor said this is the one thing that grabbed his attention most about Ray Stanford. This man always seemed to have a roll of cash on him. And Ray said to Bob, he said, your way is not working. Why don't you try my way? And then, as you know, Emma, he gave Bob Proctor a copy of this book. He gave Bob a copy of this book, Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill. And he said to Bob, if you study a little bit from this book and you do exactly what this man, the author, suggests, you can have anything you want. So read a little bit from it every day and then implement it. You can have anything you want. Bob says there's no way he could have believed what this man was telling him. This man is saying, I got to read a little bit of this book. And he said, I'll give you a couple of other suggestions. And if you follow it, you can have anything you want. He says there's no way he could believe it. But he said this man, Ray Stanford, said it with such conviction that he didn't believe it, but he believed Ray believed it. And for some strange reason, he done exactly what the man suggested. Within a year, Emma, and you know the story, within a year, he had multiplied his income by 43 3/4. He took his income from $4,000 a year to $175,000 a year within the first year. And his life took off. And, he when he was alive, he used to speak about being consciously competent, or unconsciously competent. So a lot of people are doing well, but they don't know what they're doing so differently. So it's then non-transferable, let's say, to our kids or to those around us. But when you consciously aware, or you're consciously competent, you're consciously aware of what you're doing differently, what's gotten you from where you were to where you are, then it becomes transferable, right? And he didn't know. He was unconsciously competent. He was making good money, but he didn't know what had shifted. But then he started studying with some really smart individuals, one of them being Leland Val Vanderwell. And it took him 9.5 years to figure out what had actually happened. But through the repetitious study of books like this, listening to programs, all Nightingale's programs like Lead the Field, it was that repetitious study over and over and over, reading the same book through over and over, implementing, revising, listening to these audios all over and over, just like I done with Zach, right? Just like you doing with Rosabella, drilling these ideas into them. He realized what he had actually done was he had shifted his paradigm, and then he understood, okay, so by rereading this, because when you understand how the subconscious paradigm is formed, yes, it's genetic programming, but it's also formed through constant spaced repetition, right? So in fact, I was doing a presentation last night and I spoke about, Emma, there's this term in personal development circles where we talk about from default to design. I mean, there seems to be such a lot of negativity in the world. And that's what we're all subject to. That's those of us that are not consciously in control of our thinking, our minds wide open, and all of those ideas are just being absorbed, being sucked into that paradigm. And if our paradigm is determining our results, where we go, what we believe we're capable of, whether you believe your property goal, you're going to achieve it or not. If it's determining all of that, we got to make sure that we understand the paradigm and then take control of it and install ideas in there that's going to move you towards what you want, so that you're not struggling with this internal battle, this internal friction constantly, where you can do better, you want better, but you're just not stepping out and doing better because this programming is literally holding us back.
Wow, yeah. So that is a huge thing, and something before I met you, and I'd read Think and Grow Rich many times, but for whatever reason, I wasn't able to, and this is where having a mentor like yourself or a coach comes into it. I couldn't understand myself enough to understand how to get the teachings into my life. And that was really huge. So when you're talking about these goals, and knowing that clearly the paradigms perhaps that we have at the moment are not helping us, like we may have tried to get there, we may have tried to do things like you mentioned at the beginning of the session, that you've hit some goals, but not necessarily all of them. So I'm the same. I've hit some goals, but if you were to just read my goal, this one particular goal, it probably doesn't look like I've even nearly hit it. But honestly, I'm so thrilled in having only done a tiny part of that goal, because it was such a huge goal anyway. But and the it's actually the number of properties that I wanted to buy, but the properties that I have purchased are so enormous and have such value that actually I'm over the moon that it didn't quite look like my original goal. So with these kind of, understanding that we do need to change these paradigms, we've all been to the gym on the 1st of, or not, maybe on the 2nd of January, and then by the 15th, you're not going there anymore. How can we really start to understand how to change these paradigms?
So like you say, mentorship, right, Emma? But I think we have to start in learning how to change those paradigms is we've got to understand the mind. Like we've got to understand the mind and how the mind works. Like a lot of people deify the intellect, right? So they we sold the idea that knowledge is power, and go and get the degree, get the MBA, and then you'll have arrived, so we deify the intellect, but the intellect, your conscious thinking mind, your intellectual mind, is only where you're using 2 to 4% of your power there. Your subconscious emotional mind, which is where the paradigm lives, and that's what we've been talking about, this all this while. Where the paradigm lives, that's your emotional mind. That's where the habits, the belief system, the self-image, how you see yourself, everything's programmed in there. And that controls 96 to 98% of our results, our perceptions, and our behaviors. So in other words, your subconscious mind, and once again, we first need to learn how to understand, or we first need to understand the mind and how it operates. The subconscious mind is your emotional mind. It controls 96 to 98% of your results, your perceptions, and your behaviors. So it's your power source. It's literally your power source. People deify the intellect, and that's why people become so discouraged, right? Emma, you speak about, you studied all of these personal development books. I mean, people gather books, they've got all of these self-help books. I mean, self-help is just a huge genre in terms of reading around the world, right? Everybody seems to be into self-help these days. But we've got a running joke in the industry. I heard this from a colleague. We call it shelf help. We a lot of people go shelf help. So
and shelf development.
Shelf help, development. So they go, they read the book, they understand it, right? They understand it, and it makes them feel good while they're studying it. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. But when you look at the results don't shift, or the behavior doesn't shift. So they gather the information, they gather all of this knowledge on these particular subjects, on goals, habits, attitude, fear, whatever it is that you're working to overcome or you're working towards. You study all of this, but we gather it all up here and we become top heavy. So this idea that knowledge is power, knowledge is no such thing. Knowledge is only potential power, applied knowledge. That's where the power is. So it's where you take knowledge and you internalize it, you make it a part of your paradigm, you make it a part of who you are, and then you start acting like it. Like, think about this, Emma. We all know what confidence looks like, right? So we've got an intellectual picture, an idea, but most people are not stepping out confidently, or they're not showing up as a confident individual because of the subconscious program, the self-image program in there. And that's why you've got to understand the mind. And the other thing I wanted to say in relation to understanding the mind, there's only one of two ways that you're going to take an idea from your conscious thinking mind, which is 2 to 4% of your power, and move it into your paradigm, your subconscious mind. One of two ways. One is like this, bang. It's an emotional impact, a jolt to your system, right? Loss of a job, loss of a relationship, loss of a loved one. It's like a emotional impact, because the subconscious is your emotional mind. So that's one way you get an idea from the conscious mind into the subconscious. The other way is through constant spaced repetition, over and over and over. Hence, why every day or every week you're speaking to Rosabella, she's listening to the stuff you're listening to, you're programming these empowering ideas into her. That's why, Bob seen such significant traction by studying this book, Think and Grow Rich, over and over and over and over and over and over. With Zach, listening to that self-talk album by Shad Helmstetter over and over. That's what solidifies it into the subconscious, that constant spaced repetition. And maybe one other thing before I hand back to you, Emma. We were sold the idea that you read something, and if you memorize it and you sit in an exam and you can repeat it, you've got it. And that's why so many people, they know how to do better, but they just simply don't act on it. They do not do it. And the older we get, the more knowledge we gather. So this gap between what we know and what we do, it seems to be getting wider, because we've got all of this knowledge, but we're not necessarily doing it. So knowledge is not power. It's only potential power, applied knowledge, internalized knowledge. That's where the power is.
Yeah, very, very powerful. I'm going to jump back to one of the things that you said in that, which was confidence. We know, a lot of us, generally you can see somebody that's confident, you could emulate them, couldn't you? And if you're an actor, you can behave in a confident way. But another one that I find really interesting, and one that certainly applied to my life, that in certain areas of my life, certainly now around property, I feel really confident. I've got to that stage now. Are there times when I have a bit of imposter syndrome? Are there times when I feel a bit, oh, absolutely. But I keep pushing through it. And then I'll find there are other times in my life where I'll suddenly be being what I would consider myself to be being a little bit like not at all confident. So even in one person, can't we? We can know exactly how to be confident, but we still may only choose one particular area. So as you said, it's not that we even don't know how to do it or don't know how to copy somebody else. We've actually got it within ourselves to be able to be confident the whole time. And I find that, really, really incredible. And to reiterate this sort of knowing doing gap, and this is where sort of mentorship and coaching. So I've got a fantastic lady at the moment. She's got a 6-month-old baby, so really young. She's got so much going on, and she's going off and doing all of these things, and the things she's doing are great. She's a lot of things, and they're good individually, they're great things, but actually I'm this is, you're really good at remembering these, and I'm working very hard to become really good at remembering all these kind of quotes. But she's doing lots of things, but she needs to do those things in a certain way. And that is where we had this kind of conversation. I was kind of like, look, you're doing all these things, but actually if you did it in this way, it's going to be much quicker. We're going to get there faster, and we're going to go in that way. So she had the knowledge. She knew what she was going to do. She was pretty confident, actually. She was doing really, really well. But equally, it was about doing those things in the right way. And so, yeah, I found that sort of, really, really incredible. So can you explain a little bit more about this kind of conscious, subconscious? I know you talk about the sort of the stick man as well. Would this be a good time to jump into that?
Yeah, I think so. So I know you've probably dreamt about this image. So if you're listening, if you're listening or watching this right now, there's a little model of the mind that I've got shown up on the screen, and the top circle that represents the mind, right? And the mind is divided into two. There's a horizontal line down the middle of the mind, and the top half of the mind, that's the conscious thinking mind. That's your intellectual mind. That's where we pile the books up. That's where you're using 2 to 4% of your power. That's where we become top heavy. That's where the shelf help sits. And the subconscious, this is the emotional mind. I said earlier, this is your power center. It's the feeling part of your personality. It's where 96 to 98% of what you do comes from. And it's what's happening in the subconscious emotional mind that determines what this thing, the body, does. Now, up here, connected to your conscious mind, is 5 antennae. And those are the 5 physical senses. So we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, right? That helps us correspond with the outside world. And it's connected to your conscious mind. So we can look at something and understand it and register it here. So we can read something, we can memorize it, but that does not necessarily mean we're going to do it, right? It's what's happening here. If that kind of just introduces us to the mind, Emma, whoever's watching this and maybe seeing this for the first time, there's 2 parts of your mind, and this is what you've got to understand if we're really going to get a shift in results, but not only a shift in results, but a permanent shift in results. Because I can tell you, once you internalize confidence, it's magical. Like it's so beautiful when you can show up and just, you know, be so comfortable and calm and confident within yourself that nothing or no one sets you off. Like it doesn't. And I can give your listeners, Emma, simple suggestion on how to internalize confidence. In this book, in Think and Grow Rich, there is a self-confidence formula. There's actually a formula for self-confidence. I've got it up here. I've got it framed. And gosh, I read that statement, and it's a full A4 page. I've probably read it every day, 200, 300 days. Like I've just been so consistent with that bugger, Emma, that it just becomes a part of you. You become confident, you show up in that world, but once again, you understand how the mind works, right? So it goes against the grain of everything we've ever been taught, is to read that self-confidence formula over and 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 over every day for 200, 390 days, however long. That goes against the grain of what we've been taught. We've been taught you read something, you can repeat it, you understand it, you've got it. No. Are you doing it? So why I kept reading that self-confidence formula, because am I showing up in the outside world as a confident individual? Do I show up confidently in terms of my behavior, my energy, my action? Do I show up? If I don't, then I got to keep reading that thing. I got to keep reading it until that idea within the subconscious paradigm shifts, because it's that constant spaced repetition that internalizes it. So, once again, understanding the mind, understanding how it works, and understanding then the modalities which shifts ideas in there, and then sticking with it. So, that's where the coaching, the accountability comes in terms of keeping us on track.
So that made me giggle a little bit, Lee, knowing you very well. So I think we can struggle at the early stages of this mindset journey to understand this kind of repetition thing. Yeah. So one of the things that obviously Lee's mentioned about, and in fairness, I've got my Think and Grow Rich in my bag just over here, and my bookmark is in the self-confidence formula. And so one of the things is this, as you say, this repetition. So Lee will make us write, let's say, that down for 30 days. And you just can't really imagine. And it's not until you do something like this that you understand the full impact and sort of the sort of formula that Lee gives you. There's this huge amount of repetition in it. But with this, so you're writing it down, and you would have thought, wouldn't you, if it's like 30 days, so, you're writing it down, and it's kind of like, and often, certainly at the beginning, it's a bit of a rush. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, it's 11:30 at night, and I said I would do it today, and now I've got to do it, and I'm tired. So you're there writing it. And so the next day you're thinking, right, I'm going to do it at lunchtime. So then you're feeling, yeah, I'm doing it at lunchtime. And then, so you start sort of getting into that rhythm. And so you're thinking less about actually writing it and more potentially about what's actually in there. And then you suddenly get to day 15, and you're thinking, is this the same piece that I've been copying each day? It literally can't be. I don't remember these 3 sentences or something. And that is so incredible, because you're a different person each time, each day. You may be feeling a different way or whatever. And it's just amazing how you spot things. Even on the 30th day, you kind of think, oh, and there have been times I remember where I've actually said to you, Lee, I thought at the beginning I understood what this meant. And now I really want to question exactly what it is saying. And yeah, so I've found that hilarious. Those moments of really understanding why you repeat, and why Bob Proctor basically read that one book every day for, what was it,
61 years.
yeah, over 60 years. I mean, that's got to be saying something. And he, you know, if you could even be a tiny portion of the type of man he became, well, that would be really amazing. So look, Lee, I'm very much aware that of the time, and I know I really want people to be able to find out a little bit more about how perhaps they can come and spend a bit more time with you. So how can we just sort of bring this to a conclusion?
So, I mean, Emma, we've just really scraped on these, the surface on these ideas around paradigm and programming. And if you're listening to this and you want to go a bit deeper, I've got a webinar. I'm running a webinar on Thursday at 9 a.m. UK. It's 11 a.m. South African time. And it's called How to Clear the Blocks to Your Abundance. But when we talk in abundance, we're talking an abundance of health, an abundance of confidence, of whatever it is that you moving towards. If it's a financial goal or a business goal, a property goal, abundance in that area. So how to clear that the blocks to your abundance. But what we're going to go much deeper into, so like I said, Emma and I have scraped on these ideas. We're going to go much deeper into the paradigm. I'm going to show you from a graphical perspective how it works. And yeah, hopefully really shake you up and give you some tools and strategies on how to gain momentum as you move into 2025 and set yourself up for success. Because I promise you, if you keep doing what you've always been doing, you always get what you've always been getting in terms of results. So if we want different results in 2025, and I know the year is not done yet, but some of us are planning already for the next year. If we want different results, we've got to operate with a different model. We've got to install a new subconscious paradigm. And I'd like to invite you, join us for this webinar on Thursday, and we'll go a bit deeper with these ideas.
Absolutely. And I have to say, it's these webinars, guys, really do take this opportunity to feed yourself this knowledge. It is literally so powerful. So there's going to be a huge number of you sat there thinking, oh, another year, and I just haven't achieved what I wanted to. And I can honestly say that my time sat with Lee and all the learnings have been so incredibly powerful. I can't believe where I am right now. I feel so fortunate, so honored to be where I am. And I'm not even hardly where I want to be, but I'm so much further than I was 5 years ago, Lee, when you called me up in the middle of a rainy field and I was trying to organize stuff. And as always, I was really disorganized and everything was just a disaster. To where I am today, and the things that are happening at the moment, I'm having to really kind of take a deep breath to accept all these great things. Now, are there challenges along the way? Absolutely. Are there going to be loads more challenges? Absolutely. But it has been, yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But it has been this constant, I call it consistent persistence and persistent consistency, because you just have to keep going. And there's been many a time where you just think, really? You look up the sky, really? Is this really how it is? Can I just not have a break? And I used to really sit there and blame whoever it was that was potentially running my life. And it wasn't until I was able to accept complete responsibility. Now, I accept that responsibility, but I don't always know exactly how that's going to pan out. I don't know necessarily how to change that, but I'm constantly working from within. And actually, one of the things I listened to in one of these things where it talks about, oh, I know where it is. I'm sure it was another thing that just jumped out at me. I'm listening to the condensed narration of that Earl Nightingale reads of Think and Grow Rich. And he talks about, I'm sure it was in there, that we only use literally a minuscule portion of our brain.
I think the figure he uses 2 to 5%, and that was based on a lot of different studies.
Yeah. So it's incredibly powerful. So what I'm coming around to is, if you've got an opportunity to spend time with somebody like Lee, please do jump on it, because it really is so powerful. And I think at this time of year, especially when we're all thinking, really, I seem to have not, and quite often some of us, they've not even gone forward, that you actually feel like you've gone a bit backwards. So don't have that. How many more years do you want to go through that, or do you want to break that cycle? Do you want to make that change? So definitely. So it's the,
if I can just comment, just one small comment on that, Emma. Like, you're talking about breaking the cycle, this belief system which we've been getting into, the paradigm. There's such a simple idea that if you are told, or you write this every day over and over, you repeat it to yourself, you affirm it. Failing at something doesn't make you a failure. You're only a failure when you quit. Like, that's such a simple statement. And it's obvious. Failing doesn't make you a failure. You're only a failure when you quit. Or there's no such thing as failure. We can only learn and grow. Those are such simple statements. But think, if you tell yourself that 100 times, if you rewrite it 100 times in the morning, 100 times in the evening, you do that for 2 weeks, you're going to embed in your subconscious mind this idea that failing doesn't make me a failure. It's part of the process. I'm only a failure when I quit. So nobody can call me a failure unless I throw the towel in. And it will make you so hard-headed, so stubborn and persistent. You'll just keep going in the face of adversity. And, anybody who's just starting their property journey, you're learning all these strategies. You got to knock on estate agents' doors and speak to landlords or investors. And, it's just very uncomfortable in the beginning. Like, it's going to test you. You're going to have to develop new skills, make new connections. But I promise you, if you just keep going, and this is where the mindset comes in, if you programmed with the right ideas and you just keep going, eventually the sky will clear. And that's my hope for you. And that's why I'd like to invite you to join us on Thursday, so I can help you, clear the sky, install those ideas that will really empower you and move you through whatever you're navigating.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lee. So we will put a link underneath wherever it is that you're listening, because we're sort of across the board going live today. And of course, if you've got any questions and you're listening to this on the replay, then do put your questions in, and we will endeavour to get those answered for you. So again, thanks so much to Lee. I am I am going to be on with you on Thursday as well, to really benefit from your fantastic teachings. And thank you so much for your time today.
Emma, it's